On this episode, we do our best to find a few upsides to the huge downside of the COVID lockdown.
So if you need help finding a few bright spots to help you get through this, you'll get a smile from this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee krap, and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who came to Thailand in 2001 to be a social butterfly, but ended up being stuck in the larval phase.
Ooh, that's kind of gross, dude.
Yeah.
And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a one-year teaching contract almost 20 years ago, and I fell in love with calibrating precisely the amount of spice in my food, so I never left. Before we start, a huge thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a whole bunch of cool stuff, including our regular show a day early, behind-the-scenes photos and videos of our interviews, discounts on swag, which you can find on our website, and various other things that aren't available to regular listeners. But best of all, patrons also get an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we riff on current events and random topics. We just finished recording this week's bonus show, and we chatted about a few random things. The weird disparity between what's busy and what's not as Bangkok opens up. More privacy issues. And the fact that privacy advocates worried about scanning into a store with the Thai China QR code might actually be onto something. Although it's not the Thai government they need to worry about.
Yeah, we should put the X-Files theme in here.
Yeah. To become a patron, head to bangkokpodcast.com/support.
Or the Halloween theme, I'm not sure which one. All right, well, on this episode, everyone, we wanted to do our best to try and do a positive spin on things, despite living in what is quickly becoming known as the darkest timeline. Because look, right. COVID is a global disaster. It's a tragedy for millions of people and a truly awful generation-defining event. Everyone is hurting. Everyone is affected. And 2020 is one of the worst years in memory, and it's barely half over. Things suck. But we cannot let ourselves be overcome by the dark side of the Force. To quote Dumbledore during the attack on the Death Star in Lord of the Rings, there is always hope, and there is a bright future at the other end of this ridiculous year. So with that in mind, Ed and I have decided to focus on the positives of being trapped at home during this awful time and talk about the things that we are thankful for. It's like our own little Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Yeah, so the things that make us smile still and the things that will help us come out smiling on the other side. Some of them are broad ideas, some are tiny specific little details, but every little bit helps, and I think all of us can use a little bit of a bright spot in an otherwise dark time. So that's what we decided to do this episode and see how it goes. So Ed, what are your thoughts on this?
You know, I love this topic because the simple truth is that when you're in a bad situation, you kind of have two choices. You can just get depressed and complain and whine, or you can try to make the best of it, right? And the bottom line is we're all taught as kids to always try to make the best of a bad situation. And so in a way, a shitty situation like this is kind of a test of your creativity, or in a way, you know, how can you not be miserable in a situation where you really should be miserable based on your previous situation? So based on our past lives, our lives now suck. Like I'm kind of, objectively, it's like, Bangkok still has a curfew at 11 p.m. Like when was the last time you had to be home at 11 p.m. like when I was 12 years old or 13 or 14, something like that, so it's a little bit goofy to be like, oh my God, it's 10:15. I got to get home.
Yeah. But some people are having a real, we're not making light of the situation where we understand there's a lot of people out there that are really struggling. And,
of course.
A lot of people are having a really hard time with this, and that's totally fine. And, as a complete aside here that we didn't plan on putting in, on season 3, episode 79, we did a show called Thailand's Evolving Attitude Toward Mental Health. And we had on two therapists, mental health therapists from New Counseling Service, and they were great. So, hey, if you're having problems, reach out to them. They're really good. I've heard very good things about them from a lot of different people. So that's one way that you can find help if you're struggling. But for me, the other way that I find help to get myself through a situation is to laugh about it and to smile about it. It's how I deal with with shit.
Yeah, like you said, I'm not trying to make light of it. I'm just trying to talk about. I don't know what the right word is. I don't know if the right word is benefits or just maybe some things that have surprised me a little bit, or some things that maybe have been better that I didn't see. It's like looking into this when you get the news of the lockdown and all this kind of stuff, it just seems like pure misery. But then again, you have a choice. You can make the best of it or not. So I've got a few things that have been better than I expected.
Right.
And for me, the first thing is that, my social life got reduced by 95%, so in terms of going out, whatever. So I'm spending obviously way more time at home.
Right.
And the result of that is this. I actually like to experiment. Just an example is with diet. So a lot of listeners know the last few years I've been trying to be vegan and trying to eat whole food and unprocessed food. But I've been doing this for 30 years. Like, I like to experiment with different diets and things like that. But if you talk to anyone who's tried a unique diet, the hardest thing about any unique diet is your social life.
Right.
So whatever diet you're on, like, it doesn't matter whether you go low carb, low fat, vegan, carnivore, it doesn't matter. The hardest part is your social life, because you go out with your friends, you meet some people, you go to a restaurant, and you can't eat what everyone else is eating.
Right. Your buddies are all ordering steaks, and you're like, I'll have a chicken wing and a side of olives or something, whatever your diet is. It's rough.
And again, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter it doesn't matter what end of the spectrum you're on or what type of diet it is. It's very hard to stick to an unusual diet if you have a normal social life. And so what I discovered is just having almost no social life. It's just made it easier for me to experiment and do my thing. And so I've talked about this on the bonus show before. I'm not sure I talked about it on the main show, but I took this opportunity to get even more extreme, and I did this potato diet thing, where for 7 days I just ate boiled potatoes and drank water and coffee, and I lost 5 kilos. And that would have been much harder for me to do if I had a normal social life, or if I had the temptation to go out with friends. Right. But I wasn't able to go out with friends. I'm stuck at home, and it just allowed me to experiment and do my own thing. It's weird. The word freedom it's actually a quite ambiguous term, because when you can kind of do anything you want. So in our normal life, especially as adults, we can kind of do anything we want. Obviously, we have wives and we have responsibilities, but you're an adult. You can do what you want.
I had a Snickers bar for breakfast one time. That was pretty cool.
Wild. You're a wild man.
That's right.
But the weird thing is, just because of your friends or social life, it's like you really don't have that much freedom, or it's like you get in a rut or a pattern, and so what I find in my social life is there's just certain things that you like to do, so you do them over and over again. So I've got my things I like to do in Bangkok, and I tend to do them over and over and over again. Whether it's going to like a pub quiz, going to this film club, eating at certain restaurants. I'm really following a pattern, a pattern. It's a pattern that I like. It's a pattern that I've developed over the years, so it makes me happy. But when that pattern gets broken and you can't do those things, in a way, you have to be creative. You have to come up with some alternative to that. And so it's very strange. It's like because technically now we obviously have less freedom than we had before. Yeah. Although, as we talked about, Bangkok is now starting to open up and restaurants are starting to open. It's a very strange thing, but in a way, the restriction of my social life gave me more freedom to experiment with my diet, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. That's not something that I would consider, like, that wouldn't make me smile, but it made you smile. You know what I mean? But no, this is a very personal thing, right? Like, everyone's got their thing.
I like to experiment. I just, when most people ask me like, why are you vegan? I just say, I'm curious. And most
people have a snappy comeback to that. You idiot.
Well, no. What I'm saying is, when I say that, most people, I can see that they don't consider that a very satisfying answer.
Right, but who cares?
But for me, it is. Like, I think it's interesting. Like I find it interesting to try these different things. I've done a paleo diet. I've done a low carb diet. I'm curious. I want to try it. I like to try things.
It's funny you're sort of experimenting with food, but I find myself going the other way too because I'm locked down. And for me, if there's some like hardship in my life, like if I'm going through a rough time or I have this quarantine or something, I'm like, well, I should reward myself with some good food. I should at least be eating well, So I do the opposite. So I'm at the store and I'm buying like the expensive meats and the nice bread and some nice chocolate and stuff. I'm like, well, I got to reward myself because my life isn't perfect right now, which is maybe not ideal.
No, true that. I mean, I think that it's interesting. I think that during this shutdown, it's kind of a curious thing because I think some people, because of the shutdown, some people were going to gain weight because of the shutdown.
I certainly have. Yeah, I put on like 5 kilograms.
It's funny, but I've lost weight because I feel like I have more control over what I eat. So when I'm in my normal mode and I'm going out with friends, I'm under social pressure to eat whatever. And so now I'm more in control of what I eat, and consequently I've lost weight.
Well, that's good, man. That's one thing that keeps you going, so that's great. For me, the major thing that's sort of been a big positive for me, and a slight negative, and I'll get into that in a little bit, but an overwhelming positive is I've gotten to spend way more time with my son at home.
Yeah, that's got to be a positive. I'm sure it's extremely frustrating at times.
Oh, dude. I mean, yeah, I've railed about parent. Like, I love being a parent, and my son is just the shining star of my universe. But, dude, listeners, if you haven't spent a day alone with a kid, like, it is exhausting. You are destroyed at the end of the day, mentally and physically. You just want to sleep. That's it. But, we bond. We're playing games. Like, I'm just looking over here in the corner. I've got a couple of old boxes that my wife ordered some packages in, and tomorrow we're making a robot costume. I'm going to cut it and glue little robot armor on him and stuff like that. And we're playing Lego, and he's watching YouTube and playing probably more video games than he should. But, there's still positives that come out of that. He's learning incredible new vocabulary. He asked me what an atomizer was. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about?
For real? Yes.
Yeah,
he
called it a tomizer. He said, what's a tomizer? It took me a while, and I'm like, oh, in one of the video games he plays, there's a gun called an atomizer.
Oh, funny. That's
and
great.
I was like, oh, well, I was like, I sort of dipped my toe into the theory of molecular energy, but it didn't really ring any bells with him.
Great.
But we're bonding, and it's not only that we just get to spend time and hang out together and like it's all positive, happy, joy, but I get to discipline him the way that I think is appropriate, and he gets to give me feedback on that. And it's overall, it's strengthening the bond between father and son. So that's huge. That's huge because he's almost 6. And think about it, Ed, what your first memory, your very first memory, how old were you? I'm guessing like 4, 5, maybe, like your first solid memory.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, this is not the exact answer you're looking for, but one of my earliest TV memories is actually Richard Nixon on TV.
Wow.
That's one of my earliest things I remember seeing on TV, and I'm sure
that explains a lot, doesn't it?
It was probably during Watergate or something like that, and I just remember seeing Nixon on TV. I mean, it's not my actual earliest memory, but it's one of my early. I'm sure I watched TV before that, but I just don't remember what I was watching.
Well, the point is that he's of the age now where he's starting to make memories that he will be able to remember in 50 years, and those memories are going to be hopefully with me bonding, doing fun, cool stuff.
Right. And
that's huge. That's a great opportunity that this shitty situation has given me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cruel reality that as an adult, most adults are parents, but also have to work. It's such a cruel fact that, I mean, and it's true obviously for both men and women often where both parents have to work, that it's just like at the exact time that you would love to be spending time with your kid, it's like you've got to work.
Yeah, so I'm lucky that we're both stuck at home, and that's the overwhelming one. And some of the negatives is that just like, by the end of because my wife is still working, she's got a job that she can't really do from home. So by the time Friday evening rolls around, like I'm like, I need a day off by myself just to like exist in my own head for a while, because I'm tired, man. Spending a week with your kid is rough, but
But overall, it's good for your relationship with your son.
Yes, yeah, and that's what's important. So that's my positive, and that's what I look forward to every day. At least until about 3 in the afternoon when I'm like, can I have a nap, please?
Well, my second positive, I mean, I guess this might be kind of a cliche and I guess it's not that interesting, but I was just looking at my expenses, looking at money in the bank, and I realized that I mean, it's not a lot of money, but I think I've saved about $500 like during this lockdown. And it really made me conscious of how much my social life costs me. So I'm not someone who, I'm not someone who tracks my expenses like in detail. I'm sure that's a shock to everyone. If anyone in my family or my mom's listening, you will be laughing right now because you're well aware of this fact. But obviously, I know how much money I'm used to seeing in my bank account at the end of the month, And
Right.
So now, roughly, we've been on lockdown about 2 months now, roughly. And I just got more money in the bank. I'm just like, wait, what is this? There's just all this extra money there.
Right, yeah.
Like, what's it doing there? Where'd it come from? And I realized it's funny because I don't think I've got some crazy social life. I feel like I normally go out or meet friends or have dinner or see a movie maybe 3 nights a week or something like that. But even just cutting that out. So, for the last 2 months, that's essentially been 0 nights a week.
Right.
So even just cutting out 3 or 4 nights a week, you save money. And it's funny. I still have a drink at home. And so I still am buying stuff, but obviously it's cheaper to buy booze at the supermarket than to buy booze in a bar or restaurant. And then it adds up over time.
Well, this ties into Bangkok not being a cheap city anymore because, you go out with your friends and you spend, you go out for a semi-nice dinner, you have a couple glasses of wine with dinner, and then you go out and see some live music and have a couple more drinks and
That's right.
some snacks. You're out, you can be out 3,000 baht by the end of the night.
Yeah, it adds up. So, in a way, so maybe the real positive is not so much the actual amount of money I have saved, but the self-awareness I've gotten about the cost of my social life. It's like
Right.
now I realize like, oh wow, this stuff really adds up.
Yeah, it sure does.
Makes you more aware of it.
So we're recording this on 29th of May, and usually I've the metaphor that I use for my basically monthly salary is like I finish the month as like an on fire plane filled with bullet holes, just sort of sliding along the ground towards the finish line of the month, and then I cross the finish line and my plane magically repairs itself and I'm flying high again. But this month, if the month is over and I've got way more money in the bank left than I normally do, I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
this
exactly.
is great.
I'm with you. I mean, you and I are both kind of like salarymen in that, we live. I'm not saying hand to mouth or paycheck to paycheck, but the bottom line is, we don't make a lot of money, and so it's like.
Yeah, I'm not renting sailboats every other month to take the family out on an island
So it is
cruise.
kind of, the bottom line is, in general, staying home is cheaper. Shock.
Yeah.
Shock.
It's like it's so obvious, right? It's like
Yeah.
duh. But when you're living through it, this is one of the things that you can focus on. You can choose to focus on. Well, at least I'm not spending a lot.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at my bank account and I'm like, wow, there's money in my bank.
Yeah, maybe you can put that money towards a course or something online, learning a new skill or something. Like, who knows?
That's crazy. I'm going to blow it on some gadget, but
Right,
it's
I'm
a theory. It's a theory that counts.
Finally get that nose job I've been dreaming of. So for me, another one that I thought was interesting, and this is a very small one and it's very personal to me, but I'm just able to putz around my house being a dad, fixing stuff and getting a better idea of what needs to be fixed in the future. Because, you spend so much time at home and you start to notice things like, oh, the paint on that corner is coming off. And like, oh, maybe I can, this is 20 centimeters wide here. Maybe I can buy a shelf and put it there. And,
That's cool. Yeah, so that's cool. So it's basically you have more time to take care of other stuff that you would not be focusing on.
Right, because you come home, you're tired from work, and you sit down and watch TV, have dinner, and then you're in bed. But I'm here throughout the day, and I'm cleaning things and fixing things and keeping things tidy and neat that I normally would have just completely ignored until they fell apart. So it's an interesting thing for me because I own my place while my wife does. So I don't rent. If I rented, I'd probably be much less concerned. But as a homeowner, this is important to me, and it's stuff that I have time to just sort of see. Like, oh, like this afternoon, I went and bought some little hooks, those little brass hooks that you can screw into wood. and I hung some upside down on my own little shoe shelf by my door. And now I've got all my umbrellas because, you know, you collect umbrellas here during the rainy season, you know. So at the end of every rainy season, everyone's got like 15 umbrellas in various states of disrepair. So now they're all little like hanging from these little hooks I put in, and it's really
neat, dude.
It's so lame, but I'm so proud of it because I'm organized.
So it's kind of cool. You're basically tweaking your living space.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's a good benefit.
And there's a nail that's coming up in one of my bedrooms, like coming up through the floor. Every time you step on the floorboard, it goes down like a millimeter and pulls the nail up like a little, like fraction of a millimeter. So after a while, it's got like this little bump on the floor, this nail sticking up. So I pulled out my toolbox today and I got a nail punch and a hammer with my son, and we were like I was holding the nail punch and he was hammering it in. You know, little
That's
stuff
great.
like that. It seems stupid and dumb, but it's stuff that takes my mind off of things. And
It's
lets me
funny. That
focus.
stuff really matters when you make. You know, actually, I can relate to this because I'm still fixing my new place and I'm doing tons of DIY stuff. So yeah, those things seem small, but like just being able to fix something that's been annoying you, like a creaking door or just something like that. Just there's these, you know, life is filled with hundreds of minor annoyances. So finally having the time to focus on something and fix that,
right?
It's worth it. It's worth something.
Right. It's like, you know, it's such a cliche of house husbands, you know, like they've got a to-do list they never get around to doing. But
right.
This helps me feel productive. It helps me feel like I'm doing something because It's very easy to just sit at home with your feet up and watch Netflix or PlayStation and just, you know, let the day go away.
Okay. Well, my last kind of unexpected benefit of this shutdown. So I think of this show tonight as it's kind of like the unexpected upsides of a big downside. You know,
right?
You know, it's like the lockdown, the virus. It's a huge downside.
Oh, that's really good. I'm going to use that. I'm going to change the title of the show right now.
It's the upsides to the downside. So this is a little bit weird, but again, it's one of these things that it just matters to me. So I'm the kind of person that I'm a creature of habit. So when I find something I like, I just do it over and over and over again. So I've got a bunch of restaurants I like in Bangkok, and I usually order the same thing there. So it's almost humorous. So there's probably 6 different restaurants in Bangkok that when I walk in, they just bring me what I always order because I always order the same thing. It's just the way I am. It's like when I find a dish I like, I find a restaurant I like, I just go in, I just get that. It's just the way I am. But so it's basically, so I think of myself, unfortunately, as just a creature of habit. But this lockdown has just broken the habits. You know, it's like when your life is forced to change, you know, it's like when someone takes your freedom away, it's like, again, you're just in this new situation. And it's like you have to be creative. And so it's weird. I have been cooking more, but I'm in a weird situation because my kitchen is not finished. So I don't have a finished kitchen where I can just go crazy cooking. So I have to order food, but a bunch of restaurants that I normally eat at, I can't do takeaway from. And so I have found, I found 3 or 4 like new restaurants. And I know that, again, it's a little bit like your nail on the floor. It seems like such a small thing, but it's kind of cool. Like, you know, I think in general, being a creature of habit, it's bad because your life is just boring and the same, but maybe I just find some kind of security in that. So normally I just eat the same thing every week, you know? So it's just during this lockdown, I've been like, oh shit, I can't go there. I can't order that. And it's just forced me to get online and search around like good takeout, good takeaway. And, you know, we've talked about it before. Bangkok has got to be one of the best eating cities in the world. Oh yeah. There's just a shocking amount of variety. And I'm just not good at exploring new restaurants and new places. And so and now I've just expanded my repertoire. I just have new places and new food that I've been ordering and checking out.
Well, the weird thing about being in a rut, like any rut like that, is you don't know it's a rut until you're kicked out of the rut.
That's right. That's exactly my point. You know, it's just like
you're like, oh, this is great. I love doing what I'm doing now. This is very comfortable. And then, you know, a meteor hits the earth and you're forced out of your rut or whatever. And you're like, oh, wow. And it's like, you've got new vision. You're like, wow, this is actually way better.
That's it. That's exactly right. I mean, you know, it's in a way, it's almost childish because you know how like parents are always dragging kids to do something and the kids are moaning and whining and then they love the new park you took them to.
Right.
That's how I feel. It's like this shutdown has just kind of dragged me kicking and screaming into this new situation. And then I'm like, oh, wow, this is cool. Like, that's a great restaurant. Like,
Nice.
so that's my third unexpected upside to the downside.
So my third and final one is kind of an interesting one for me, because I think I've talked about on the show before about how I sort of keep my head down, keep my nose to the ground, and sort of stay to myself in my building. I don't know a lot about the people who live in my building, nor do I care. I mean, this is my little corner of the universe, and leave me alone and I'll leave you alone, and we're all happy. But I've found that I'm getting to know some people in my building a bit more, and it's really nice.
Cool. I mean, you see them, like, when do you see them? Because you're in your apartment most of the day. So when do you see them?
Yeah. Well, what I found out is that about 5 o'clock, about 5, maybe 5:30 every day, all of the kids in the building head downstairs to play. And we've got like a pool and like a little grass area out on my condo in the back. And not all the kids, but there's probably 7 or 10 kids in the building that all head down there in the afternoon to just ride their bikes in circles and play tag and throw balls back and forth. And the parents wander down there too and just sort of hang out and stuff. And most of them are Thai, and I have very basic conversations with them. But there's like a really nice Japanese couple, and I found out the dude has a shoe store where he makes shoes, and I was like, oh, maybe I could buy some shoes from you because my feet are so freakishly big. And it's just nice. And I get to know the kids too, and I'm goofy and I like playing with the kids. So they're like the other day they were playing a game of zombie, and they wanted me to chase them as a zombie, going like with my hands out going, and I was like, no, that's old school zombies. Like, new zombies can run. And they're like, no, they can't. So I pulled out my phone. I whipped out my phone and I was showing them scenes from like The Walking
28
Dead,
days later or something
like that. Yeah, like nothing gruesome, but just
the
like
fast
running
zombies, the modern
zombies. And they're like, wow, zombies can run. And I was like, yeah. And then I went, rah, and screamed, and they all screamed and ran away. I mean, it's simple and it's wholesome, but it was nice. And I'm getting to know the parents and chatting with them, and they're asking me questions and stuff. So I'm just feeling like a little bit more of a sense of community here now.
That's great. I mean, the bottom line is it's work life is weird in that you just go away from home to some other place, the office, and that's the majority of your day. And then you're the time you spend at home, you're tired and you're kind of, it's like you're winding down. It's not the peak of your day is when you're at home, but when you're working from home, it's like, that's your space, that's your world. And, it's just, you have a much broader experience of your neighborhood. It's kind of a cliche that, people sometimes live in neighborhoods or places for years without getting to know their neighbors.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you're working all the time.
Right. And it's crazy, like you spend probably 35% of your life at work, saying this is 33% actually, but say the other 2% is commuting, and you spend 30% of your life sleeping, and you spend 30% of your life at home.
Right.
And it's that's I mean, this leads me into a bigger question, which a lot of people are asking now, is what is going to be the socioeconomic and the sociological impact of COVID? Are people going to start to realign?
In the long run? Right. You're right. I've read some stuff about some company. Which company was it? I forget. I don't think it was Twitter or Google, but some fairly big company basically said, we're going to let people work from home permanently.
It was either Google, Twitter, or Facebook. It was one of those.
Yeah, it was one of those big companies basically said, we're going to let people work from home permanently. That's huge.
Yeah. But I wonder if this is going to sort of result in somewhat of a renaissance where people are being like, this ain't good. Just sort of working for the man, clocking in, clocking out, and eking, like squeezing out as much free time with your family as you can. It probably won't, because money controls what the conversation, but
right. Well, at the very least, I think we're learning that with the technology we have now, we don't necessarily have to be at the office. So my guess is we're not going to see some anti-capitalist renaissance or something like that. But we might see more flexibility in how we define working life. Exactly. Obviously people have been working from home for years, but it's still maybe 10 or 20% of most people work from home. But now it's like 90%, and we're still surviving, at least people who've been able to keep their job. So maybe employers in the future will just give us more flexibility.
Hope so. But and then you'll have more free time to spend on things like actually getting to know the person that lives next to you and
Sure, absolutely.
So that's what I thought. I like that. I like that because, like I said, normally it's just so easy to live in your little cave and mind your own business. But this has sort of forced me to come out of my shell a little bit and get to know the people. And they're all really nice. And I'm glad I do now.
Excellent, man.
Yay me.
Well, what this shows is that we listened to our parents when we were kids. And, we listened to this lesson to always try to make the best of a bad situation.
Yeah, and like we said before, we're not making light of this. We know it's just terrible. Everyone's really hurting now, and we're all going through it. But there's a podcast I listen to called Pod Save America, and it's an American politics podcast. And the guys on there are fond of saying, "Look, you can either cry or you can laugh. We choose to laugh."
Well put. Well put.
Yeah. Good ones, man. All right. Well, it's been a while, but let's do another round of Token Tie, where our good friend Bowling works with us to get to the bottom of certain quirky elements of Farang and Thai culture that confuse, befuddle, or vex those trying to expand their cultural horizons. We haven't done this in a long time, but I was chatting with my good friend Friso the other day, and he said, "Oh, I haven't heard that in a long time. I really like that segment." So we have a couple on ice. Let's dust them off and get into some Token Thai.
Cool.
So I've got a question. Recently, I've been trying to cut my weight. And when I tell my male friends, my foreign friends, I'm trying to cut weight, all the tips, all the program of cutting weight or do the diet and saying that you did wrong, you don't do this, you don't do that. So the question is, why foreigners love to give unsolicited opinions or advice?
This is interesting. I think it's right away I see kind of maybe both some good and bad to it. I do think Westerners are more likely to act like they're experts in everything. I know I'm guilty of this sometimes since I read a lot and I tend to have a lot of opinions. And so maybe like part of it, I think. So I don't know if you know this expression, mansplaining. It's like when men always try to explain everything to women. Even if you're a doctor, but you're a woman, like some guy will try to explain to you how to lose weight. So part of this might be like mansplaining, and I do think it's kind of egotistical. But on the other hand, it could also be because we're trying to help. I don't know, Greg, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that the opinion is like, well, I might have some insight into this, so surely they would appreciate hearing my insight. Yeah, a little bit of ego, a little bit of mansplaining, maybe expat-splaining, because we're expats. But I think a lot of the time it's like people, why wouldn't you want to have a little bit of extra advice? Like, why wouldn't you want to increase the pool of knowledge to draw from? But we're also really loud and obnoxious and not shy about sharing opinions. So, I guess so. Why would you think Thais would not do it? Why would Thais do it less than foreigners?
Well, I guess in terms of like, maybe we're afraid it's not the right answer or the right advice. That's for one thing. Because like if we advise wrong, we would not want to advise that. Or because of like, we afraid that if we give our advice, it might offend the other person. If our advice is not what they're doing, they get offended or something like that.
I think that's true. I really do think Thais are more careful about stepping on other people's toes, whereas I think foreigners, Westerners, we just kind of assume we know more than the other person. I don't. Obviously, it's not all Westerners, but I do feel, at least among my friends, it's each of us wants to be the expert. Each of us wants to convince the other one that we know more about nutrition than they do, or whatever, even though none of us are actually experts.
Well, one example, when I was with my ex, I was cooking Thai food, and he was telling me what to do. And I look at him, it's like, you see the knife in my hand?
That is mansplaining.
Yeah, I think that's a good one, Ed. So we've all had that, like, I'm just going to go over to your place. I'll just take sukhumvit. Nah. Only an idiot would take sukhumvit. You got to take Petbury, So yeah, maybe we're just naturally more arrogant, more willing to put ourselves out there and fail. I don't know. Thanks, Bowling.
Thank you.
A final thanks to our patrons who help keep the show ad-free. Patrons get a ton of cool perks and the warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that they're helping support the show. Find out more by clicking support on our website. And connect with us online. We're Bangkok Podcasts on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from our listeners and always reply to our messages.
Right on. You can also listen to each episode on YouTube. You can chat with us online or even reach out to me directly on Twitter if that's your thing, where I am BKK Greg. So thanks for listening, everyone. Hope you're doing well out there. Stay safe, wash your hands, and we'll see you next week. So Lady Gaga came out with a new album today. It's called Chromatica, and it's really good.
For real?
I'm ashamed. You know, when Lady Gaga started to become big, I was like, oh, flash in the pan, stupid fashion, wannabe, high so. You know, I was just like really bitter about it. And then I listened to a couple of her songs, and I was like, oh God, she's really good.
I'll tell you this about.
I was like angry.
I'll tell you this about Gaga. It's like her music is not my kind of music, so I just don't like pop, like dance music. But when it is, so I didn't like her, you know, kind of like you. I was like, okay, I don't like it. But then when I saw her in interviews, she's smart and funny and cool, and so I'm like, I call myself a Gaga fan, not like a fan of her music. It's just I'm just not into it.
Are you a little monster? That's what she calls her fans. You know who I compare her to is Marilyn Manson, because they build this ridiculous character and they just run with it.
Yeah, you're kind of right. Yeah,
splatter it all over the social media and the zeitgeist of the time, and it offends some people and it pisses off a bunch of people, but it gets some huge fame, a lot of fans, and a lot of money, and I think more power to him.